Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk about the Super Bowl 54 halftime show. Last night at Super Bowl, at the Super Bowl 54 in Los Angeles, California, in a game featuring the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. There was also another historic thing that happened. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Rams. Los Angeles, the West Coast, California. Hey Lisa, what's going on? Had its biggest moment in its musical history. For the first time ever, hip hop was on center stage. For the first time ever, all of the halftime performances were done by hip hop artists. Now we can say that WrestleMania beat the Super Bowl to something. What was that? WrestleMania way back in 2017 had a hip hop artist, Pitbull, performing at its halftime show. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Super Bowl halftime show, which featured historic hip hop artists, all hip hop artists for the first time ever. It featured 50 Cent, Kendrick Lamar, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and Mary J. Blige. Now, firstly, I want to talk about Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. They come out, and it's an all white stage. Everything is all white. Now, I thought the all white motif looked a little bit small. In the beginning, I'm like, well, how are they going to fit everyone, on that stage? Because there's always going to be a lot of people coming out. Initially, there were some concerns that there would be a hologram of Tupac, and we talked about this hologram bullshit. How I hate this hologram stuff. Lisa talked about how she hates the hologram stuff. So, no hologram, right? But they did bring out a white piano, and Dr. Dre performed California Love. So, they did pay tribute to Tupac in some sort of way there. Mary J. Blige comes out. I'm not doing it in sequential order, I'm missing something. But Mary J. Blige comes out and she is dressed in all white and she has this really sexy outfit on. So the guys out there and the ladies who are bisexual or lesbians really appreciated this outfit. You know what I mean? This was sexy but classy. So anybody interested in women, whether guy or girl themselves, would appreciate this outfit. To me, it was sexy but classy. She comes out, she performs um, her song, two songs she performed. 50 Cent comes out now. What the talk of the town is the 50 Cent performance. Because when he comes out, he he comes out and he appears like he was hanging upside down. He was doing his Batman thing. And nobody expected 50 to be there. He wasn't on the bill. He wasn't on the bill to be there, but he was there. He performed it. You know what I mean? And it was all right. But the performance that I feel stole the night, the performance that blew everyone away, was Eminem's performance in Lose Yourself. Now, this performance is what has everybody talking. One, because Eminem doesn't look like he aged a day since the 90s. You know what I mean? Since the '90s and the 2000s, when he was at his height, like when he was really the top uh, um, performer, in music, too, because of what he done. Now, just like with Snoop Dogg comes out and he does the Crip thing, he does the Crip walk, he shouts out the Crips um, in his performance, and he's all dressed out in this Crip outfit, Crip bandanas and a whole outfit. And they told him, they said, don't go out there flagging, don't go out there, um, representing Crip. You know what I mean? Because we're giving y'all the stage. We're giving all hip hop artists now. We're giving y'all all the stage. We don't want you going out there and, representing no gang shit. He says, the hell with it. I'm doing that anyway. I'm holding my hood down. I'm holding LBC down. And he goes out and he does that. But yeah, that's what they said, Lisa. They said they didn't want him to do it. So he goes out there and he does it. I read it on um, certain websites. Like with Eminem, they told Eminem, do not take a knee, do not participate in the protests of, against police brutality against the BLM, the Blue Lives Matter. By BLM, I mean the Blue Lives Matter. Against them in support of the Black Lives Matter protests. Don't do the Colin Kaepernick thing. Don't take a knee, right? They're telling him, the NFL executives are telling him this in the back, and he's agreeing to it. Being Eminem, right? We know Eminem from the 90s and the 2000s. This is the man who made the song, I Just Don't Give a Fuck. Like, literally, he made a song called I Just Don't Give a Fuck. And just like that, it was zero fucks given, and he goes out there and he does the knee thing. Now, I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh shit, what's he doing? I thought he was, this was right after they did the Tupac song, so I think he's out there, saying a prayer for Tupac or praying or being, like Lisa said, being happy that he's at the Super Bowl. No, he's out there participating in Colin Kaepernick's uh, protest. So he did it in a sly sort of way. He did it, sticking his middle finger up at the crowd. This is a man who cursed his own mother out in that song. So if you think he didn't care about his own mother, you think he's gonna care about what the NFL has to say? No, he doesn't care. He's Eminem. He doesn't care. He's used to, sticking his middle finger up at the system. So he does that. Dr. Dre is warned, just like with Snoop and just like with them. Dr. Dre is warned. Do not do the song "Fuck the Police" or any mention of anything derogatory towards the police. Dr. Dre also does the song. Kendrick Lamar is warned not to do a specific song that he's involved with. He says fuck it and he does it anyway. So basically what this was not only it was hip hop representing hip hop being forefront, because we've seen hip hop on the Super Bowl before. Never completely hip hop, but like I said, other big shows like this have been ahead of the game, like WrestleMania that was doing it way back in 1989 with Run DMC. But this was more of a political statement. You know what I mean? Like Snoop Dogg coming out representing his hood, Eminem coming out representing BLM, and Dr. Dre and Kendrick Lamar coming out representing for, uh, fuck the police, because they never cared anyway. You know what I mean? Now, some of the downsides, that I didn't like, that they could have did more surprises. Somebody that was missing from the show. And I just thought of this just now as I was logging on, that this person was missing from the show. This person, to me, was an essential component to the West Coast sound, and specifically Aftermath when it came back. When Dr. Dre came back, he was out of Death Row, and he was out of, he was founding Aftermath, and he was being the driving engine behind Aftermath. This person was essential. This was a guy that was essentially a piece of the puzzle. And that was Exhibit. Exhibit was missing from this. You know what I mean? I expected to see him as a surprise guest, maybe. You know what I mean? Exhibit, X to the Z, was the most lyrical member, besides Eminem, of the Aftermath team back in the day. You know, think of how many songs he did with 50. Think of how many songs he did with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. He was a part of that. You know what I mean? And he was not there. Especially, I would have loved to see them come out with Bitch Please. Bitch Please would have been a hell of a song. That was one of my favorite songs. And the Bitch Please remix that had Eminem and Dre on it. You guys remember from the Marshall Mathers LP, Bitch Please too. You know, so that to me, some of these crowds of slim draws is hotter than Crenshaw when it's packed and full of cars. You know, I would have loved to have seen that, but we didn't see. Exhibit didn't come out, and another thing it was missing. Yeah, I know they couldn't, Lisa, but it would have been funny to see. It would have been cool to see. You know what I mean? But obviously they can't do that. Rihanna, pregnant, of course. So, like we have in other channels, other videos on this channel. She was missing. I love the way you lie. I felt the performances in a way, and I told Lisa this morning, they were a little bit short. I don't like football, so I came for the musical part. I would have loved to see more other different songs than what they did. Like, as soon as you were getting into a song, it was cut short. But obviously, they don't want to do some Kid Rock WrestleMania 25 shit and go overboard and start playing music. We know that people come for the football, so that's what they wanted to do. She was there, okay. Other than those two things, and I know Lisa's correct, they can do Bitch Please, but I would have that is my favorite song from Eminem, Dre, and all them back in the day. You know, when but other than that, this was special to me because I know Lisa's only 15 to 20 minutes time slot. I know this was special to me because, and I talked about this, I think on my other channel, not this channel, but on my other channel, that when I first started to listen to rap, even though I'm from New York, I started to I listened to more West Coast rap. And that was another guy missing from this, Ice Cube. I listened to NWA, Dr. Dre, Tupac, um, Snoop. Those were the guys I was interested in, especially Snoop and Dre. A G thing, the Chronic, the first one, was one of the first rap albums that I ever really got into. So when I started to get into rap, other than the Fugees, Tupac and Snoop and Dr. Dre, not really in, yeah, a little bit of Ice Cube and NWA, like the latter half, West Side Connection and stuff. That was what I got into. Even as a New Yorker, I always loved the, even now, I got a lot of friends on here, a lot of videos that I watch that are West Coast, based. You know what I mean? I was always interested more in the lowrider stuff, the Dickies, and they had dancers come out, dressed in all those outfits. The movies I would watch from the '90s, like Boys in the, Boys in the Hood, South Central, um, you know, movies like that we talked about on the channel. I was always interested in that. That was the first genre of rap, subgenre of rap that I really got into. So this one held a special place in my heart. You know what I mean? Because it was some West Coast shit, and I'm from New York, but I got love for Cali and you know what I mean, Snoop and Dre and Easy and Ice Cube and Eminem and all those guys. You know what I mean? Like Mary J. Blige, yo, if you had a sister or a cousin or somebody older, that was a girl, they listened to Mary J. Blige, all the time. She was I call her the voice of the projects, the queen of hip hop soul. She spoke to the ghetto. So seeing her up there, it wasn't my favorite song from her necessarily, but it was the song that's most popular and it's associated with Dr. Dre. So, of course, they did it. 50, everybody knows 50 when he was having his run in 2000 to like 2006, 7. Yo, he was my favorite rapper. Friends of mine would accuse me, yo, you're a 50 stand. You always, you know, you say 50 G Unit's better than Dipset, which I did say at the time. G Unit was better than Dipset at that time because Cameron kind of moved away from what I liked about him in the late 90s. But so all of these artists, all of at one point in time, Tupac, my first solo favorite rapper ever. You know what I mean? So all of these artists were special to me in some sort of way. So this performance and this whole ambiance, this whole scene was special to me. I remember going to see Straight Outta Compton in 2015 in the theaters as well. So all these artists was people that I all grew up listening to, I all grew up loving, as I'm sure we all did. And it was a big moment for hip hop. For the first time ever, hip hop reached the heights of the Super Bowl. And yes, Fatima Robinson choreographed it, like Lisa is saying. And Fatima Robinson, for those who don't know, was the one behind Rock the Boat, Aaliyah. So that was special to me because that reminded me of Aaliyah, who, of course, you guys know I love and always remember how I call my own daughter baby girl after the nickname from her. So that was special. Lisa saying Mary Mary sang Lift Every Voice and Sing. And Janaea Kale, who of course is from that Omarion song, Supposed to Be, that's the most famous song I know her from. Uh, Singing America the Beautiful. And Mickey Guyton, a black country singer, singing the national anthem. I never heard of Mickey Guyton before, but obviously a black country singer, black people in country, I support that. You know what I mean? Because a lot of country artists, like for example Charlie Pride and even Darius Rucker, who I've talked about somewhat, black country artists never get the recognition they deserve. Black people are just a much a bigger part of country music as their white counterparts, but unfortunately, being that country has the socio-political spin that it does, black country artists don't get the recognition and the props they deserve. So I'm glad they got it here. I, I mean, and we know, like we talked about in the Whitney episode, country is not. I mean, I mean, the Star Spangled Banner is not an easy song to sing. Country is not easy either to sing, but I'm sure she did a decent uh, job. And at least I didn't see that part. You know what I mean? So I can't really say. Mary, Mary, of course, the God in me. I had associates that were fans of gospel music. I know a lot about. I mean, somewhat a little bit about them. Tremendous um, group of tremendous duet of ladies. But for the halftime show, and I keep going back to this. Man, like this was like seeing guys that you had known, friends that you had known, performing up there. To see Snoop up there, Crip walking, to see M doing this thing, to see Dre doing this thing, especially after Dre went through what he went through like 2 years ago with the brain aneurysm. When we got on here and we said that Dr. Dre was in a precarious position, we were all praying for the doc. You know what I mean? And to bounce back the way he bounced back, to be on the grandest stage in all of sports and entertainment, on this night, and to have basically this night dedicated to him and the people that he helped produce, the people that he helped put out there, because he helped put out Snoop, he helped put out California Love, he helped put out basically the whole West Coast. Um, he helped put out Kendrick Lamar. He helped put them all out. He helped them all out. He gave them their push. He was really the musical father of them all. So this was like his version, I feel, of that. This was Dr. Dre's version of how Berry Gordy must have felt of Motown 25 when all the artists were out there like MJ and the Supremes and the Temptations. This was Dr. Dre's version of that. Because everybody that he helped put out there, everybody that he helped produce was out there. And Lisa's absolutely right. It made it extra special that it was on Black History Month. And this was a Black History themed Super Bowl with all the performances, even the great one, even the people's champ himself making an appearance, The Rock, in the beginning. You know what I mean? So throughout the whole performance, it just was shining through. For the Black National Anthem, um, a song written in 1919 by James Weldon Johnson, Lift Up Your Voice and Sing, to be featured alongside the Star Spangled Banner, which I feel like the Black National Anthem is a way better song, lyrically, of course, and musically, sonically, than the freaking Star Spangled Banner. For that to be put up there, tremendous, man, tremendous. The only thing it was really missing, I feel, that would have capped it off, being an entire extravaganza of Black history, for Barack Obama would have made an appearance or a speech. It was a hell of a night. It was the best Super Bowl halftime show that they've ever had. Um, Rappers bring a different type of energy. Rappers bring a different type of vitality. And for us that are millennials, Dr. Dre and his group of people, his menagerie, his squad of people are the Motown of our era. They are the Motown for us. You know what I mean? Um, Death Row Records, all that group, Aftermath Records. And right after Snoop had purchased the rights to Death Row Records just days ago. So this was their proudest moment. So, give it up to them. And they also made a political statement. And that brings me to my next point. Yeah, Lisa's absolutely right. The Super Bowl wants to get more of an audience. They have to have artists like these and not old artists. Yes, and that brings me to my next point. It would seem that everybody was happy with the Super Bowl except one individual, one malcontent. And this person is the usual suspect, the hater of not only, and I think if Obama would have made an appearance, or if Exhibit would have sang Bitch Please, this would have made this person's head explode. And this person that I'm talking about is Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is, and I have him in my background photo only to mock him, you know, how crazy that he looks as a dweeb. You know what I mean? But like, um, he was your typical malcontent, your typical hater. You know what I mean? And he came out and he tried to make this shit political. You know what I mean? Shit that wasn't even political, he tried to make it political. He says, and I'm going to read it directly to quote, I'm not even going to paraphrase it. I'm going to read it direct, what he said. And this thing that Lisa sent me. Ben writes, Snoop Dogg collaborated on a song in January with the following lyrics. All of you N-words out there, take your guns. You're using to shoot each other and start shooting these bitch ass motherfucking police. That'll impress a motherfucking N-word like me. So Ben Shapiro is using the N word like another Joe Rogan, right? Using the actual N word, blurting it out in his tweets, but he is using it. And he is trying to shit on these rappers performing at the Super Bowl. Just like a couple of years ago, he tried to shit on J-Lo and Shakira. We have a video on it in the archives. Once again, his head has exploded, but this even worse because it's black people. One thing that makes conservatives even more angry than immigrants is black people, because as hard as they might try to defend every other action that America has ever done, from illegal wars to everything, nobody is going to sit here in their right mind anyway, at least publicly, and defend slavery, Jim Crow, or any of the other injustices done to black people, at least in the past. Right? Nobody's ever going to deny that America like was, because they'll say it's not anymore. They say it's over. Horribly racist to black people. So that's one area that even conservatives try to be at least a little bit conciliatory towards. But when it comes to Ben, he doesn't like black people. He is very racist. And he is, when it comes to music, he is very elitist. This is a person that has said on numerous occasions that he believes that music, rather than getting better over the decades, has actually gotten worse. The like he has a theory on his channel one time where he said um, jazz is a downgrade from classical. Uh, classical is a uh, rock is a downgrade from jazz, and rap is a downgrade from rock. So in other words, the blacker it got, the worse it got in the line of Ben. You know what I mean? So that's basically what he was saying. That as classical is the best, then jazz, then rock, and finally rap, which he doesn't consider music at all. So you knew this was going to make his head explode. He claims this is a political statement. He claims that this is in line with the Democratic Party. It's not, because if you look at what the mayor of New York, who himself is black, and what his stance on rap is, and if you remember back in those days with Dolores Tucker and Dionne Warwick and them, and the Reverend Calvin Butts, they were just as much vehemently against rap and what they call gangster rap in those days as any white politician back then. You know what I mean? So it's not it's not something that any mainstream Democrat would have supported back then or even now. I don't know what planet Ben Shapiro is living on, trying to link Democrats with hip hop. You know, no. Democrats don't even support actions against police brutality. I don't know where he's getting this from. He's just trying to attack the Democratic Party. But anyway, Candace Owens comes out, and I said it to Lisa this morning, I thought she was going to go along with the narrative, and she was going to be like her co-worker, Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire and just use this opportunity to attack, black art and attack black people and attack hip hop like she's often done. But she's proven to me that there's hope in her. There's good in her, as Luke Skywalker said in Return of the Jedi. He says to his father Darth Vader, "I know there is good in you. You haven't extinguished it all. Deep within that mechanical suit, that makeshift heart, that black heart, as it were, there is good in you." And Candace Owens is like that. She is like a Darth Vader. She has become, she crossed over into the dark side, and we all assume that, like Obi-Wan said to Anakin, that he was lost, that she was lost. But she comes out in her tweet and she says, "This is an excellent performance. Undeniable hip hop and R&B excellence. Undeniable performance in hip hop and R&B excellence." And somebody says, "Careful, the GOP might cancel you." And she says, "I like Luke Combs sing country at halftime during the Thanksgiving Cowboys game. I also happen to love Dre, Mary J, Kendrick Lamar, and Kendrick Lamar tonight. I grew up loving both hip hop and country. Politics doesn't dictate who I am or what I like." And I knew there was good in Kansas. I knew that there was some. I read a book, Blazed, and I came out vehemently against her. Guys know that plenty of times. But when she had her kid, I gave her props where it needed to be given. I gave her respect. And I even saw her point a little bit in her feud with Cardi B, during the whole WAP thing. But with this, I gotta agree with her. Listen, I like wrestling. I grew up loving professional wrestling. I grew up being involved, making videos about professional wrestling. Now, obviously, I know that professional wrestling is not in line. The politics of most wrestlers and most people in the wrestling business are not in line with the politics that I personally share. My um, liberal, my progressive, my black consciousness, people of color consciousness, the other side of me that I grew up with. So it's like this with Candace too. I mean, she obviously loves hip hop and R&B. She's grown up in it. She's a part of it. She's loved it since a kid. She says it in this tweet, and she's not going to allow the politics of it to get in the way of something that she enjoys. She gave the hip hop artists their respect, and you know she still got some soul left in her. So props to her for that. Ben Shapiro, on the other hand, fuck Ben Shapiro. you know, obviously he's a racist. He says facts don't care about your famous slogan, facts don't care about your feelings. Yeah, but when somebody says something about Jewish people or Israel, Ben is always in his feelings about every single thing that's to do with Jewish people in Israel. And he jumps to the gun in the conclusions on many things. And when it comes to music, like his friend Joe Rogan, when it comes to sports, he is an elitist, and I feel like he is a racist. You know what I mean? He's not just a conservative commentator. He is, in fact, racist against black people and against Hispanic people and even against Asian people. Because when Parasite won the Oscar, he was aghast that Parasite won the Oscar. He didn't want Parasite to win the Oscar. But he tried to defend Asian people when the Stop Asian Hate thing was coming around by saying that other groups of color were the ones committing acts of terror against Asian people, trying to use Asian people to beat up BLM. So obviously, you know, the whiter it is, the more he's for it. The blacker it is, the less he's for it. you know what I mean? That's his MO. But his wife is a doctor, so what? But other other commentators for this performance, they've come out and they've praised his performance, and Lisa's absolutely right. The formula for getting people back interested in the Super Bowl and getting back people back interested in the halftime show after what they did to Janet, after they embarrassed Janet in 2004, after they made her a scapegoat for their morality campaign, for their moral panic, is to get this back and get more artists that we love, that we grew up with, just like the movie industry figured out. When the movie industry came out with Straight Outta Compton, after that, you started seeing a bunch of other hip hop biopics. You started seeing the Wu Tang biopic. You started seeing other hip hop biopics, Tupac and Biggie, and Tupac and Big came. Tupac's came out after that, but Biggie's came out before that, so discard that. But you started seeing other hip hop biopics, other biopics, from hip hop artists, from the people that we've grown up with. Specifically Wu Tang, that was done way more, better than Straight Outta Compton on TV and stuff. You know, people that connect with the younger audience. So maybe that's what you'll start seeing now. And what I want to see, what I would love to see, as a New Yorker, is my city. We have just as many rappers and just as much of a cultural imprint on the hip hop game. We invented hip hop. Hip hop was birthed in the Bronx, but I would love to see for the next Super Bowl, make it happen, NFL, for New York rappers to represent on that stage, on that on that stage, for the Super Bowl, for New York rappers, for even Fat Joe, even, have instead of Mary J. Blige, have Ashanti come out, right? Have Wu Tang, have Jada Kiss, have a couple people from Bad Boy come out. Just New York heavy, everybody from New York. You know what I mean? Even Diddy, right? Even Jay, right? And then you gotta have What's Love on there. You gotta have Empire State of Mind. You gotta have you're gonna have hip hop. You gotta have the other half of it. There's another side to it. There's always two sides to it when it comes to hip hop. I got a video on Facebook, talking about it. Just today it popped up in my memories, as a matter of fact. Hip hop, right? And R&B artists too. Like I said, Ashanti, should be out there. You know, I can't really think of uh, who else is, popping around that time. Keisha Cole, maybe. You know, because that's the next era they got to do, man. Because our city deserves representation. We got just as much a story to tell as the West Coast. The West Coast had their moment. They had their style. They had their story to tell, just like in the movie industry. We us in the East Coast, our style, our swag, do rags and baggy jeans and Timberlands. We got to be up there. You know what I mean? Our style, our stilo, our flavor has to be represented. And yes, Ashanti is a part of that. Jay Z is a part of that. You know, Jada Kiss, the Locks, all they're a part of that story. They're a part of that New York story. And I would love to see it. Because just like on my Facebook memories, like I was saying, my Facebook memories tells the whole story. Just like there's a West Coast side, there's a East Coast side. There's a story we got. There's a style we got that's distinct. That's all our own. That I would love to see up there on that stage. Yeah, that's true too. Right, Lisa's right. Lisa's absolutely correct. But hey, MetLife Stadium, I've never been there for a Super Bowl, and obviously, if they ever do it, I'll never be there because Super Bowl tickets are bad, buku expensive. And unless y'all, the subscribers, are gonna start subscribing and making me mega rich, you know, when it do come around to New York, I'll never be able to afford it. I've been to MetLife Stadium for WrestleMania, but I've never been to Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Start doing that. Make it possible that J Reaction goes to his first Super Bowl. I don't like football, but make that possible anyway. Start that as a hashtag campaign. It's up to you out there. You know, make it possible. And of course, we got to get to a Super Bowl. We've been to two twice in my lifetime, 2008 and 2012. We won the Super Bowl. The Giants. The Jets have never won in my lifetime ever. But I would love to see it. I would love to see New York artists represent for us New Yorkers. It would have to be a little bit colder. That's another thing. You know what I mean? Like we don't have that LA weather. You know. Luckily for me, when I went in 2013 at WrestleMania 29, it was in April. you know, um, So but I would love to see it anyway. Ashanti, they did one summer jam like that. They did one summer jam like that. With a bunch of New York rappers. Remy Ma was out there, Fat Joe, Bad Boy, all of them, the Locks. You know, they did that one time for New York on a summer jam stage, but never, never the Super Bowl. But next time, you gotta have New York artists, man. You gotta represent for the place that mothered this rap shit, as pun would have said. You know what I mean? That's the other piece of the puzzle. And maybe down the line later, New Orleans artists, and then ATL artists, and start doing it up for hip hop. We did it for other genres for the longest. Now, their time has come, their time is gone. Super Bowl, obviously, the first Super Bowl was born in 1966. I don't think they did a halftime show, but it was born in the full bloom of the rock and roll and soul era. And many of those artists have already gotten their shine. They've already got their chance to perform on the biggest stage of them all, as far as sports and entertainment. Now it's time for hip hop to shine. So this was the moment the hip hop shine. This was just the beginning, guys. But anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing. It was a great Super Bowl, and I'm throwing up the I'm throwing up the West Coast, and I'm throwing up the West Coast for Big Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50, all of them. Even though 50 is not from the West Coast, but we love them like we love Pac, and rest in peace to Tupac. Shout out to the whole West Coast, man. Califas, California. Love you guys. Gunner and Convex Perspective and all those other YouTube babies. And again, make it possible that I go to the Super Bowl when they do have New York artists perform. And I'll be doing a review, me and my boy, Sean Grandison, aka Mac, doing a review on the Fresh Prince, the new Fresh Prince show on Peacock. Love you guys. Peace. Cause yeah, Lisa, come on, man. How they gonna represent? And I just pictured it in my mind. I dreamed it. Could you imagine that stage? MetLife Stadium. Jay-Z comes out, and Alicia Keys at the piano, and they perform Empire State of Mind. Man, or Fat Joe, What's Love with a Fat Joe and Ashanti. Man, yo, you know, like I gotta be there for that, man. We gotta get out there in the New York hip hop scene and show them what New York is all about. Bing bong. I love the West Coast. Like I said, Gunner and Convex Perspective and all the guys that I've listened to and follow on YouTube here that are from the West Coast, brothers from the West Coast and everything. You know what I mean? Big big time brothers, big time friends on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? But it's all about New York next. Peace. Yeah, definitely, Lisa. If it ever happens, we're gonna be there. You know, because hip hop got so much to say. We got so much of a rich history that these racists, these white supremacists, these people that want to not have African Americans shine, and have African American art forms shine, and that includes Latinos, you know what I mean, as well under that umbrella. Blacks and Latinos as well. They want to just see rock and roll, and there's nothing with rock and roll. There's nothing wrong with rock and roll. Rock and roll had its day. Rock and roll had its time to shine. 50 plus years, rock and roll had its time to shine. People forget that rock and roll is, and always will be a part of the African American experience, the African American culture, the black culture. As part of black history, it was invented by black people and influenced by blacks and Latinos as well. You know what I mean? That people forget. That story people don't tell you. You know what I mean? That the mothers and fathers of the rock and roll shit was originally black folks. The rock and roll came from the blues and Robert Johnson and Sister Rosetta Tharpe and Big Mama Thornton. All that, right? And the Rolling Stones copied from black artists, and Elvis copied from black artists, and the Beatles copied from black artists, and Van Halen copied from black artists, and they all copied from black artists. That's true, and that will always be true. Rock and roll is a part of that family, but just like when your dad can't always be young, your mom can't always be young. The mom got to pass it on to the daughter, and the dad got to pass it on to the son. Rock and roll is old. Rock and roll is what it used to be. Now it's hip hop. Now it's hip hop's turn to shine. Now we're the new rock and roll. We're the new rebellion against society in the way that rock and roll was. What happened was rock and roll is a stolen legacy. Rock and roll had a face put on it that was not its original face. Yes, it had country music in it. Yes, it had jazz in it. But the main component of it was the blues music. The main component of it was the pain and the experience of the African American experience, the African American culture. That was that was the formula of rock and roll. But they took it around, they twisted it, and they lied about the history, the origins, the roots of it, and where it came from. They told us that Elvis was the king of rock and roll. Yet Elvis himself looked up to all these black artists. Elvis's first song was Big Art the Big Boy Crudup, who was a black blues artist. So if it wasn't for the black blues artist, it wouldn't have been in the formula. Lisa saying country music was stolen too. Yes, absolutely, country music was stolen. Lisa and myself, back in 2011, we went to the African burial ground and we heard the guy, right, Lisa? Am I lying? Talk about all these African instruments that were in the country music formula. The gori from Senegal, the banjo from Senegal, right? And he played the songs. He played the old samples of all these African musics and showing how how uh, how they influence modern day music, all modern day music. If it wasn't for the black man and the black woman in this country, we still be listening to classical. You know what I mean? And of course Ben Shapiro would be happy about that. Like you would have loved to see a Super Bowl halftime performance where everybody is asleep and it's him up there playing on the violin, some shit from the 15 and 1600s. Like it's the New York Philharmonic or some shit like that. You know, up there playing with no life, everything boring. That's his ideal Super Bowl performance. That's his ideal Super Bowl halftime show. Classical. you know, you know, people forgot to wake up out of the coma that they were in after they heard that performance. They can't play football no more. They're in a coma now. That they were born to literal death. You, you know, after they heard Ben's choices for the Super Bowl halftime show. You know, but going back to my original point, every style of American music is black music, and we learned that going to the African burial ground in New York in 2011, Lisa and I. And I listened to the guy intently, and I learned a lot that day. And a lot of things they don't really teach you, even in music class, because they don't go through the history of music. What they consider as music, you know, they have the attitude like Ben. To them, music is, just white shit. And I want to say, I would give it uh, a 9 out of 10 at least. Again, Exhibit should have been there. I know they can't play Bitch Please too. I wish they could. But of course, too many Karens out there. They've been complaining that these big, scary black men are up there calling, you know, white women bitches and shit. We would hear from these white feminists the next day. So you can't do that. You know what I mean? And I wish they would have had longer sets, but obviously you can't do that too. It's more about the football. But the NFL is 97% black, and it's about time we represent the culture of the people that play the NFL, the people that contribute to the NFL, and the people that watch and support the NFL. I'm glad Mary J. Blige was there too. She's the queen of hip hop soul, but Aretha Franklin was the soul music, and Whitney Houston was the pop music. That's what Mary J. Blige is to the women of that generation. Like I said, if you had a sister, if you had a younger mom, if you had an aunt, if you had a niece, if you had a younger cousin, and she grew up in the 90s, she was listening to Mary J. Blige. She was living by Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige was the music that she was with her first boyfriend with, that she was with her first love with, that she broke up with, that she laughed with, that she cried with. That was the soundtrack to her life. You know, any female between the ages of 35 to 20 could attest to that. They grew up either in the 90s or the 2000s. Mary J was her soundtrack. And similarly for the guys, Eminem and Dre and Snoop and them was our soundtrack. We was what we listened to. It was what we partied to. It was the soundtrack to our youth, and it brought back so many memories. I think it was for millennials, Lisa, because boomers, they're dying out. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, they're old, they're passing away. Their music is passing away, their culture is passing away. The way they looked at the 60s, how we always heard in the 90s, we always heard them talk about the 60s. And used to see documentaries on, well, for white people and stuff, the Beatles and the Stones, and for black people, Motown and soul music and Stax Records and the Philly Sound, Gamble and Huff, the Delphonics. We all grew up knowing that stuff. At least I did, those stories about that type of music. Unfortunately, those people are getting older and they're passing away. now is the way that the millennials are the parents now, sometimes even the grandparents, and we look at that's the way we look at the 90s. We look at the 90s to us was our 60s. You know what I mean? Yeah, we didn't go out there and we didn't march against an unjust war because there was no war to really fight against. But what we fought against, what we our war, our Vietnam was censorship. Our Vietnam was authoritarianism. Our Vietnam was an internal Vietnam of freedom. So people like Eminem, people like Dr. Dre, people like Snoop Dogg, they fought against they fought against a different type of war for a different type of freedom. What they fought against was obscenity laws. You know, they got a lot of obscenity laws overturned with the things that they did. Uh, I don't think it was for Gen X, Lisa, because yeah, Kendrick Lamar is a younger artist, but I mean, going back to and the rest of them are in their 50s, but going back to the original thing, yeah, in the 60s, I mean, in the 90s, we didn't have like in the 60s, we didn't have the civil rights movement, we didn't have all that, but we did have certain battles to fight, certain on certain fronts that the boomers before us and the Gen Xers they didn't fight for, and those artists, although they themselves are part of Gen X, they were part of our soundtrack. They were part of what we were listening to, what we were coming up with, and they were fighting different sorts of battles. You know what I mean? Different sorts of social battles, bringing for the first time a genuine African American experience, not the watered down type that you would have seen on Motown or The Cosby Show, or even No Cap, but in some of Michael Jackson's music that was watered down. They were bringing the real struggles of racial inequality and the struggles against police brutality and the struggles with gangs and gang violence into a lot of people's living rooms in middle America. And yes, it was scary. Yes, it was different. And yes, it was new. But in a way, NWA and them became another Motown, you know, another soundtrack for young America for the 90s, and another bulwark against censorship and authoritarianism, and another push towards racial inequality and racial, you know, against racial inequality towards racial equality. The same way that rock and roll was bringing people together in the 50s and the 60s, you know, like I said with Motown, so too was hip hop in the 90s. You know what I mean? We all started listening to the same music. We all started dressing alike. And even we took it further than the millennials because we all started dating each other. Interracial relationships got on the rise after hip hop became mainstream. Like many people have said, Dr. Dre's first album, 1992, The Chronic, was like a gangster version of the Beach Boys. It was chill music, it was fun music. It wasn't heavily politicized like Public Enemy or anything like that. It was chill music for everybody, but it was real at the same time, and it produced cultural icons like Eminem or Tupac that became on the level of a Marvin Gaye or an Elvis or a Beatles or a MJ, from the previous generation. You know what I mean? So this was for millennials. I definitely think so, Lisa. This was for millennials. This was the equivalent of seeing Motown for boomers, or seeing the Rolling Stones, or seeing the Beatles, or seeing Elvis Presley. You know, like they talk about. And I used to be when I was a kid. I used to be so envious of not millennials, boomers, because they would talk about this music, about early rock and roll, about the Beatles, about Motown, about the Philly soul, different types of music that were coming out in the 60s, 70s. And I would say, damn, I wish music had that, my kind of music. People would look at it like that and analyze it like that and analyze the social impact that my kind of music, the music I was listening to growing up was hip hop and rap, both East Coast and West Coast, and the R&B was that. I mean, I wish we had the icons like the MJs and the Elvises and the Beatleses and the Aretha Franklins, from my generation, from my era. And now we kind of do. You know, you could say that Eminem is hip hop's Elvis, that the NWA was hip hop's Beatles, right? And he wasn't up there. And Mary J. Blige was hip hop's Aretha Franklin. Hip hop and modern R&B's Aretha Franklin. So just as they had their icons, the icons from a previous generation, we have our icons. We have our Elvises, we have our Beatles, we have our cultural icons, that are out there. And I would say that Snoop, Dre, and all them, they're on the level with the icons from a previous generation, you know? So, in the way they talked about the cultural impact of rock and roll and Motown and soul, 70s soul, they will talk now about hip hop and how hip hop has arrived. So, all that old shit, it's time to step aside. They've had their day in the sun. It's time for us to have our day in the sun. Lisa's saying that she just saw on TMC that Snoop wanted to have hydraulics, but they said no because they were afraid the oil would leak out. Well, I don't know, maybe, but you gotta have hydraulics on the cars in the West Coast. Yeah, it would have, and that would have given a nod to a part of West Coast rap culture and a part of West Coast hip hop culture that people don't really see or know about necessarily. And the car culture is a big part of Chicano culture, a big part of Latino culture out there. You know what I mean? That would have, and you had it in the Still DRE video. And mostly all the West Coast. Uh, you know, music's, music scene, but it would have been great to see. But the Super Bowl, they can't be too cool. But once again, hip hop has arrived. Hip hop has made it. Um, it was a Black History Super Bowl, and now we can finally say that these icons of our generation, are just as big as the icons of yesteryear. You know, it's just like we talked about in the Royal Rumble video. As you go through the different decades and the different eras, older stars fade out and newer stars come in. That's like how it is in the real galaxy. You know, stars fade out and new stars are born. Supernovas are born. And that's how it is in entertainment as well. Peace. Don't forget to like and subscribe.